What is going on, guys? This is Miasin. So just like every other format where people kind of, develop strategies to solve the format as it progresses, we have started noticing some interesting trends as of lately, especially in terms of deck building, and people pretty much main decking their side deck and side decking even more side deck cards in order to counter, the Far King Snake Eyes and the Pure Snake Eyes deck. One really big question that I've seen a lot of people wonder is, should I play backrow removal, or is it really just not worth it? And should I just play more hand traps instead? Basically just say YOLO if they have summon limit, anti-spell, and cards like that. It definitely is a very interesting question because I feel like there are a lot of correct solutions and things to consider depending on your strategy. But to be fair, the majority of the time, there is no real definite answer to these kinds of questions. It really does depend on how you are playing the deck and also the environment that you're in. Because, for example, if you're in an environment with a lot of stun decks, then you kind of have to play those back removal cards. Whereas if you're in, let's say, a North American YCS, people have a lot of money, so they can afford to play the expensive decks, aka Pure Snake Eyes and Far King. So usually you can live without those cards and pretty much just deck build super aggressively with as many hand traps as possible, and that can get you there. Anyways, before moving on any further, I would really appreciate you if you could smash the like and subscribe button for me real quick. Thank you so much, you are the best, and now let's get right into it. Alright, so the first back removal I really wanted to cover is Cosmic Cyclone because not too long ago everybody was saying that this is by far the best one, and slowly but surely people are kind of backpedaling and kind of saying, this card's not that insane, there might be some better solutions. So the main reason why Cosmic Cyclone was really nice is because it can banish Far King Island even when Sanctuary is on the field, and then that pretty much acts as a quick play Regeki. It is pretty good, and it is a quickly spell card, so if your opponent activates Anti-Spell Fragrance, you can chain Cosmic Cyclone, banish it, and banishing a card is typically much better than destroying a card. So this card usually kind of does way more than MST because there are some cards that you absolutely do not want to destroy. They have graveyard effects, or you just want your opponent to lose a card permanently. Back in the days when Metal Fools was a thing in 2016, whatever, they went Metal Fool Skill, Destroy, and then set the Metal Fool's Fusion, and then you can chain Cosmic Cyclone, banish it, and then they basically cannot really fusion summon anymore. Right now we have something a little similar in the form of Diabellstar being able to set the original Sinful Snake Eye, and then you can Cosmic Cyclone that, and that's also pretty good. So Cosmic Cyclone can be an interruption or a board breaker. No wonder people kind of like the card, but against Pure Snake Eyes, not necessarily super ideal, because if they have Divine Temple of the Snake Eye with Flamberge on the field and IP Masquerade on the Spell and Trap Zone, Cosmic Cyclone just isn't good enough, because if they're smart and they use the Divine Temple to summon the Masquerade when you summon a monster, instead of shotgunning the Flamberge, then even if you chain Cosmic on the Masquerade, then they can chain the Flamberge. Divine Temple is a trigger effect, so it's reactive, and Flamberge is a quick effect, so it's proactive. Obviously, you want to start with the reactive card, and then if your opponent does something, then you can chain the proactive card that you can always use at any moment. Therefore, Cosmic Cyclone not necessarily ideal against Pure Snake Eyes, but still somewhat decent against Far King. At the same time, it's not good enough, because if your opponent knows what he's doing, he can end on, obviously the typical board of Appaloosa, Ambler Whale, Arvada. When you Cosmic Cyclone, what's going to happen is that the Ambler Whale and the Arvada will die, and then both will trigger. Arvada can revive back a Fire Beast or a Wing Beast, something like Doolittle Chimera, so that the Promethean Princess in the graveyard is live, and the Ambler Whale could revive back something like IP Masquerade, and the Garunix can also come back and then destroy the Kirin, and then revive back the Arvada, pretty much back to square one. So your one Cosmic Cyclone just didn't really do enough. So would Duster and Lightning Storm be better in these instances? I would say definitely not against the Pure Snake Eyes deck. Again, even if you're trying to destroy multiple cards, and if they have their floodgates active, well, first of all, under anti-spell, there's, no question that these cards are worse because you can't even use them. They're normal spell cards, whereas Cosmic, at least it has the flexibility of, being able to be chained to anti-spell. These cards won't be used whatsoever. And also, if you're kind of on a board breaker approach, then these cards can be negated by the likes of Borrowed Savage and Baron de Fleur, which is a big issue for me. Obviously, against the Far King build, it's going to be less of an issue because they don't have the ability to make Omni Negates. But against the other decks, like even Voiceless Voice, etc., it's not super great. Again, it's the same thing. Skull Guardian can negate, and then you're kind of a little bit screwed. So yeah, also not a big fan of these cards overall. They're not bad, obviously. They're always nice to have in the side deck just for safety measures for other decks, like rogue decks. But usually, people just have Duster and Lightning Storm on their side, and they're just whatever. If I play against like a trap heavy deck, then these cards will do something, but I can't really think of like any trap heavy deck where these cards are like fantastic. Even against Labyrinth, they're not really good, because Labyrinth is kind of shifting away from like a trap heavy deck to like almost a combo deck now, where they're summoning a bunch of monsters, searching out floodgates on your face. You would probably be better off with like Ghost Bells at this point, you know, as crazy as this may sound. So Duster Lightning Storm, I think there are cards that you should only be side decking in case you know for a fact that your environment is really heavy on trap decks. Otherwise, against the top tier decks at the moment, these cards are honestly just really mediocre. Typhoon, I think, is one of the coolest cards because it is comparable to Cosmic Cyclone. It is flexible just like it. You can even use it on your own turn and on your opponent's turn from the hand directly. So it's the literal hand trap, like actually from the hand and a trap card. But you do have to have 0 other spells and traps on your field, and your opponent has to have 2 or more spells and traps. So it's not always live, and you can only destroy face-up spells and traps with this, unlike, you know, MST and Cosmic that can even hit, you know, face-down cards. But usually you're gonna be hitting face-up cards, especially Floodgates or some other cards that you can interrupt. For example, in case your opponent got rid of the Sanctuary, then you can pop the Island and kind of, you know, do something on your opponent's turn, which is not too bad. You can literally interrupt him there. But even against the pure Snake Eyes deck, I think Typhoon is pretty good, because if they end on the board that plays around Cosmic Cyclone, as I've mentioned, with, you know, Flamberge, Divine Temple, and IP Masquerena, then on their end phase, you can go Typhoon on the Masquerena, and just like that, even if they got, you know, Divine Temple and Flamberge, it's not going to be doing anything whatsoever. Flamberge only has the quick effect of summoning back a monster in the spell and trap zone during the opponent's turn, but Appaloosa cannot negate Typhoon because obviously it's a trap card, and it's unaffected by Call by the Grave, and nobody's gonna have the crossout designator for Typhoon because it's such a random card, which is a big advantage to playing these kinds of cards, where sometimes maybe they will have the out to Cosmic Cyclone because they can side in 1 Cosmic going first, as well as a 3 crossout that they will always have. So another issue if you are playing against Far King, your Cosmic Cyclone will not always resolve. Now, there are 2 other back removal cards that I think are very, very interesting, which are Evenly and Dino Wrestler Pancratops. So Evenly, I played in YCS Costa Rica. The card was fine, but honestly, I was very unorganized with this card. I didn't really know when to side it in, and also what to side out for it, and what to do if I drew hand traps and evenly. Like, do I let my opponent full combo and then I evenly, or do I hand trap and also evenly? It just made no sense. So again, just like Lightning Storm and Duster, if you're playing a card like Evenly, you have to have a really well-defined game plan. Just because you have Evenly doesn't necessarily mean you win. If you resolve Evenly against the Far King board, they can make it so that they banish the Arvada and the Appaloosa, and then just keep Avalawil. And to be fair, that's good enough, because they have Princess Engraved, they have Garunix, everything. So they can just destroy you with 1 single card. Not necessarily great, because you do have to get rid of your battle phase, and obviously a card from your hand. And if you draw multiple Evenlies, it's even worse. It's not like against pure Snake Eyes, where your first Evenly baits in a gate, and then you can resolve the second one. And then with 1 single card, the deck is way worse, but still good enough because they can even make the second Omni Negate, depending on how it plays out. So yeah, it's not always, you know, the best solution to everything. And against Silent Forcer again, if you have no hand traps, they will always have that 1 negate in the form of Skull Guardian. So sometimes Evenly just does absolutely nothing, because then they can protect their Floodgate and you die regardless. Not to mention that against small boards, Evenly is actually just so bad, because if they don't really banish anything of value and they can keep that 1 Floodgate, then Evenly ends up being just infinitely worse than Duster and Lightning Storm. Like, you'd rather draw these big board breakers than draw something that just makes your opponent, you know, control what he wants to give up on. If you are on a board breaker approach, Evenly is pretty good, but don't really mix this card with hand traps. It doesn't really solve, like I said, all of your problems. Pancratops, I think, is one of the more interesting ones, because I played this in YCS Cindy, and for me, it was fine. It was never really great. I mean, I only drew it once or twice. The first time, it got self-judgmented, and I don't even know if I drew it or really did much with it the second time. Pretty much just acts as a better MST. I mean, it's a monster that you summon with 26, and if your opponent goes like Imperm, then you can chain and destroy something else. So it's usually a 1 for 2, which I like a lot. You just can't really banish, and if you can't really take advantage of the fact that it has 26, it can run over something on the battle phase, then obviously it's going to do nothing. And if your opponent controls no monsters, then obviously the card does even less than nothing. But realistically, your opponent will always control something, so you should be fine. I do believe that Pancratops is a really good card. Can consider side decking Pancratops for sure instead of all these cards, right? Because you don't have to play multiple back removal. If you can dedicate 3 to 4 cards big max to back removal cards in your side deck, you should be fine. But I think even if you're on like 0, 1, 2, or 3, it's also fine, depending on, again, how you plan on solving the floodgate issue. And speaking of floodgates, here we come. So the first one is Summon Limit, so it's a floodgate that doesn't protect itself by default. It's not like Anti-Spell, which is a card that not only shuts down all kinds of engine cards, but also it's inherently protected from Duster and Lightning Storm. So this card's just super annoying, but it's seeing less play because if your opponent doesn't draw any spell cards, then it's not going to hurt your opponent. So the Snake Eyes deck, if they just draw like Snake Eye Ash, this card just does nothing. Like, you can still die through, under anti-spell. Where Summon Limit, it's just really hard to get rid of this card. I mean, I said it doesn't protect itself inherently. I kind of lied because your opponent will always need 3 or more summons to go into a Link 2 or a Synchro or an Xyz play. Like, he has to summon 2 monsters on his turn and then summon the third one, like a Phoenix, for example, right after. This card does have some outs, even if you are not playing a single back row removal. And people should definitely take advantage of that small little drawback that Summon Limit has. And then the other 2 trap cards that people are seeing are still playing this format would be Different Dimension Ground as well as Solemn Strike. Solemn Strike is a little weird because it's not, you know, a card that lingers, or it's not a floodgate. It's really just like a 1-for-1, but it's such a powerful 1-for-1 trade that it makes sense to play Solemn Strike. If your opponent goes normal summon Snake Eye Ash, you can negate and destroy, and that usually is a turn skipper anyways, so it's not even like you need Summon Limit. And in a grind game, when it's like hand trap, hand trap, hand trap, hand trap, what you can basically just do is you can negate your opponent's hand traps with Solemn Strike, so that's also very nice. In case you're top decking, and you draw like your one of out and you had multiple Solemn Strikes, then you know for a fact that your top deck basically will resolve through like an Ash, Veil, or whatever, just not an Imperm, obviously. And Different Dimension Ground is a card that doesn't need any protection because unlike Summon Limit and Anti-Spell, you just flip this card and it will resolve for the rest of the turn. So you can Cosmic, Duster, Pancratops, Destroy, it doesn't matter, it's not going to change anything whatsoever. But yeah, these 4 cards are very scary. Obviously, you only really need back removal for Summon Limit and Anti-Spell because Different Dimension Ground, there's no way to really deal with it. Now, for the real good question, like, do you really need those back removal to deal with Summon Limit and Anti-Spell, especially in the Snake Eyes mirror match, either Pure Snake Eyes or Farking Snake Eyes? And my answer is no, you don't. You actually do not need back removal whatsoever for these cards because there are a lot of indirect ways to clear them. So first of all, if you're playing cards like Fenrir, obviously that's kind of like a direct way. You special summon the Fenrir on your own turn going second, and then you start playing the game, then they will flip a Summon Limit, and then you can just get rid of it. It does make you lose momentum because you're probably gonna have to go special summon Fenrir, normal summon Snake Eye Ash effect, and then Populace effect, and then they chain Summon Limit to the Populace, and then you have to go battle phase attack, and then main phase 2 use the effect of Ash, and then you need an extender, so it's still kind of favorable for your opponent, but it's not like the end of the world, right? So it's still somewhat fine for you. And Anti-Spell is even easier because you don't even have to do that. It's really just special summon Fenrir attack. Where Summon Limit, you definitely cannot flip it preemptively otherwise. But what if you have one of these cards, right? Nibiru, the Bestials, or Phantasme? They actually allow you to out Summon Limit as well. Again, you have to use 1 on your opponent's turn, and then on your own turn, you summon 1 monster, and then you make a Phoenix. That's gonna be 2 summons on your turn, and then your Phoenix can destroy the Summon Limit, and then you can start playing from there. So the reason why playing these cards over back removal can be really good against the Pure Snake Eyes deck, for example, or Farking, is because you are covering both their combo as well as potential floodgates, because you are summoning bodies which immediately apply pressure and also threaten a very early Phoenix. And in case they don't have the Summon Limit, then it's not like you're drawing useless back removal, because these cards are not going to be doing anything in case your opponent has like full board and you don't draw any hand traps. So it's really always nice to have as many hand traps as possible that can also be bodies for a Phoenix. And also in simplified game state, having a bunch of bodies on the field basically just means that you're going to be winning because you're applying so much pressure that your opponent simply cannot deal with. And again, this applies to every single card here. Obviously, there is some form of conflicting between Fenrir as well as Nibiru and the Bestials, but, you know, it is what it is, and obviously Phantasme if you are playing it. Pancratops is a different story because it is not like a Photon Thrasher or a Cyber Dragon. you can control monsters and still be able to summon Pancratops as long as you have less monsters than your opponent. So if you really want to play it safe and you're playing all these cards, then you can play Pancratops instead of Fenrir, and that would be completely fine. But yeah, in conclusion, if you are trying to deal with Summon Limit, Anti-Spell, you know, Different Dimension Ground, Solemn Strike, all those cards, while also respecting your opponent's combo, and, you know, you're not trying to make your deck worse just for, you know, these cards, then I say just keep playing, you know, all these hand traps and board breakers that aren't just back removal, that don't really serve any other purpose, and you should be fine, even if your opponent has some other ways of dealing with your things. Since you're hand trapping them so much, they're gonna pretty much end on like literally nothing, and then you can win over time. That's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts about, you know, back removal in Yu-Gi-Oh right now, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.